Let's go ahead and launch an EC2 instance in this lesson. Okay, so I'll click on this launch instance button, and that will take me to the exact same set of steps that we used for creating a Windows machine, right? So in this case, I'm going to select an Amazon Linux AMI, select that, and then what you'll notice is the same set of screens that we went through when creating the Windows box. Let's stick to T2 Micro because Linux is okay with one CPU and 1 gig of memory as well. I will go ahead and host it in my custom VPC, in my custom subnet, and make sure that I have a public IP assigned to it. So I'll set it to enable. If I set it to disable, then I won't have a public IP. It's just gonna be internally routable within the VPC. It's just gonna have a private IP if I set it to disable. Now I want to access it from the internet, so I'll set it to enable, click on next, and then look at the storage options. What's important to distinguish here is that for a Windows box, you have minimum capacity as 30 gigs, but for Linux, you got 8 gigs, right? So that's the differentiation between Windows and Linux box here. That's the minimum size. Of course, you can scale it up and size it up to a higher number, but it starts with 8 gigs, all right? Hit tags and then the security group. Now here what you'll notice is that by default it has picked up port number 22. What was it in the Windows box? Port number 3389, right? So Windows works on RDP protocol. Now this is a Linux box which works on port number 22, right? So when we do SSH or PuTTY to the Linux box, we are actually transacting on SSH traffic on port number 22. So that's why we are allowing it from the internet. Finally, click on Review and Launch, and then hit the Launch button. Now, this screen is not new to you, it is familiar. So I'm going to use the same key pair to connect to the Linux instance. So what does this tell us? It just tells us that you can have multiple Windows or Linux machines, combination of them, no problem, and they can still connect with the same key pair. I don't have to create one key pair per machine or per EC2 instance, okay? So to keep it simple, I'll just leave it to one key pair and use that for multiple labs, all right? Hit on Launch Instances and give it some time while it creates that EC2 instance for me. Okay, I'll click on View Instance. All right, so that's my EC2 instance being provisioned. This will take about 4 to 7 minutes, so I'll pause the video for now and then resume again once it is ready. There are several methods of connecting to a Linux instance. You can use SSH tools, you can also use OpenSSH tools, or use the most popular tool called as PuTTY to connect to that Linux instance. I've already downloaded the PuTTY tool on my computer, so I've got the PuTTY and the puttygen.exe on my computer. So you make sure that you have both of these tools installed or downloaded from the internet, right? So I'm going to launch the PuTTY tool and then copy and paste the public IP address of my Linux instance and then paste it in the host name field. All right. Now, you also need to supply with the password, right? You just cannot click on open right now because you need to supply a file called as a PPK file. Now, to supply the PPK file, you need to navigate to SSH auth, and right there you got the browse button. Okay, you need to browse to your ppk file, which is a private key file, right? Now the file that we downloaded earlier was a pem file. It's not a ppk file. Let me show that to you and explain what I mean. So here's the file that I've downloaded. It's located in my .pem folder, right? So the file extension is a PEM file, right? Now this PEM file needs to be converted to another extension, which is called as a PPK file. This conversion is done with the help of another tool called as puttygen. So I'm gonna go and launch the puttygen tool and then use this tool to translate this PEM file or convert this PEM file to a PPK file, right? So I'm gonna load the file by clicking on the load button. In fact, I will copy this path just to make things faster. Load this, paste it here, and right here I'm going to select all files and you will be able to see the PEM file. Just click on open, just ignore that pop-up, and now we can click on save private key, right? You will get a pop-up if you'd like to passphrase protect it. That means in the background you will see a key passphrase and a confirm passphrase. You can go ahead and put some secret passphrases here, and that will protect your PPK file. But for now, I'll just click on yes and then save it in the same path. I'll call it as Linux PPK or something, that's fine. But what you will notice here is that the file got saved, but this time with an extension of PPK. So PEM is a file that we downloaded from Amazon when we are creating that EC2 instance, and PPK is a file that we created after converting the PEM file to PPK using the puttygen utility. Now I will launch the putty tool to browse it to my PPK file. So just go ahead and browse that, and my PPK file is right here. This time I can click on open because my IP address is intact and the PPK file is also intact under the auth section. Let's click on open. You'll get this pop-up. Just click on yes, and then now you're ready to log in. What is a user ID to log in? In Windows, it's administrator, but in Linux for Amazon images, it is EC2-user. Just hit enter and all's good. We got connected. You can go ahead and run your favorite commands: ls pwd for present working directory, ps-ef is just like your task manager. So I'm currently operating on my Linux instance, which is hosted on AWS to that Linux instance. But if you're using a Mac operating system, the steps will be different, which is clearly documented right here. So if you right click and then click on connect, you will see that here are the steps you can go ahead and use to connect to that Linux instance. So you got to run chmod 400. Chmod is to modify the permissions of that file, and then you connect to that EC2 instance using this command. So this is for Mac operating systems or any operating system that has SSH installed on them. Well, there are other methods as well. You can use a browser-based connection. As you see, there's the EC2 instance connect, and then the connection will just happen over the browser. So if you're not allowed to install puttygen or the putty tool, then you can just use the browser-based session to connect it, right? So EC2-user is a username, and all you got to do is click on connect. There you go, we got the same thing, and here is the private IP address, which is 192.168.30.79, which is the same IP address of this EC2 instance, right? That's the same thing. So in this lesson, we learned how do you create a Linux instance, how do you connect to the Linux instance, and the various methods that we can use to connect to that EC2 instance.